So what I would like to do is to go over the assignment. I think there's been a couple of questions. What we're asking you to do is to create a couple of bodies. And so the mannequins are found under prefabs. So your non-drawing hand blue button and prefabs. Grab a couple of your prefabs. Let's zoom in a little bit. We're asking you to manipulate them or pose them. We can do this with a rotation. And we're asking you to put 2 or 3 of them. We're actually just asking you to put 3 of them in relationship to one another. And we know as we move them around, we could relocate them in different ways. Copy. And you can use the green points to get kind of general control. And then you could start to use the blue points to get another level of control. And we want you to think about their relationship to one another. And then, and again, let me say this, I'm looking for a very simple background. So either use a white background or a black background, then using stroke tool of a very thin stroke tool with a contrasting color. So if you have a white background, a very thin stroke tool where you might work to connect between them. And just like the work we were doing with the potato drawings, very thin lines that you might build up with a kind of density. This aspect of the project is not to make a big, quick, bombastic move, but even, if I could even get this a little bit smaller to begin to articulate some notion of a space that's happening here. Do I want, and we asked you to consider the space between the bodies, do I want there to be visibility between them? Or do I want, right, can this person see this person? Or do I want there to be the sense that this body is kind of laid into this surface or protruding from the surface, right? And so again, I would make a couple of options using a couple of different layers. So let's see. See what layers. So everything right now is on layer 2. I would put my people on one layer as a way to organize this. So I could turn them off or on. I would put my sketches on another layer. And then as I begin to work with planes, I would put the planes on a different layer so I can name them. Again, this is people. This layer is curves. And then this layer will be surfaces. So let me come back to drawing some more lines, and we can really get into more and more detail. What if I connected the left foot and the left toe to the left toe? And both feet to both feet. Right? How do we begin to build this up throughout our surfaces? Again, what we're looking to do is, how do you build up the density? How do you build up an understanding of what's happening with this person, with this body in space? What's their kind of gesture? What's their body doing? How is this working? Right? To really build up a density and an understanding of this, do we want this person to be able to see that person? Do we want these two people to be able to see one another? And so is there a way that this surface might begin to have an opening through here, but continue through here? So it might obstruct the view between these two people. And again, we're asking you to put yourself in the space of one body. What do we see as the surface begins to wrap around? How are our feet supported? Right, imagining these as kind of topo lines. How is our legs supported? What can we see between one person and another person? Between here and here versus between here and here. And so use these very, very thin wires as a way to be able to build up a topography and a space. And are these people in one space? Is this a closed volume? Do they enter into this space? Does it kind of fold down and then come back up? Right, we can manipulate these. So maybe I enter into this surface this way. Right, and we don't even have a surface here yet. We're just beginning to approximate how we might move into this volume, what it means to be seated over here. What can I see from one space to another? What do I see as I look out from here? And again, we want just a little bit we want nothing in the background, no warehouse scene, no nothing. Just give us a nice simple white or black background and simple black or white lines. And if you want, you can begin to articulate the bodies with a color, just so these stand out a little bit. And then what we'll do is we'll go to our other layer, to our surface layer. Was I just drawing? I was just drawing on my surface layer. So here's a way to fix that. I'll lock the people and turn them off. Everything now I'll use a really big volume. I'll select everything and I'll put it onto my curves layer. All right, I can lock my curves layer now, turn on my people and they're locked. Now I'm working on the surface layer. So let's think about this now as we start. Let's use our purple thumb, non-drawing hand, select a plane. I don't want that to be orange, but we can start. I want it to be a relatively simple color. You can scale down this kind of little patch and decide to start somewhere. Maybe white isn't the best color. Want a little bit of contrast between the lines. Let's edit that, subdivision it. And let's begin building up our surface this way. We just want to make sure that we have the same number of control points working in each direction. And so we'll start very simply here. And then we can begin to manipulate these. Right? Let's begin to approximate our surface through moving these control points. We just want to be careful to keep in mind that what we can't do is get too many. We want this to be kind of grid-like because we're going to have the grid or the cage moving in two orientations. And so they can splay away from one another, and that's okay. And we can add more detail in places as we need to, but I just want to be a little mindful of, like, say, this edge here. As I extend it, I want to keep in mind that that needs to be kind of grid-like. And we can see it's wide and then it gets narrow, and that's okay. We're probably going to want to add some detail around the bodies. And we can add that detail in, but as we add detail, it's going to be all the way across our surface. So start with a very sparse grid to begin to articulate your volume of space. And where you can see what was happening over here, where it started to get a little extreme. Probably just want to manage the way that those points don't begin to overlap too much. Right, and we've begun to define this space. We'll keep an eye on the perimeter. And then we talked about, as I was building this, some idea that maybe this begins to pull out. We can turn off the auto loop and just start to get a sense for, right, those are those two edges here. Just keep an eye on your cage and make sure that your cage is pretty rational in terms of what's happening with it. Then we can begin to add in more detail, right? We had more detail over here. This is starting to become this kind of nice pillowy surface already. Not enough detail yet, but that's okay. Because remember, we can add detail in. And just be careful as you do it. Let's say I want to add some more detail through here. I can see I just added another line. If I want to add some more detail through here, I just added that line. But we start to get a lot of points in different places, and you're just going to have to be able to manage those. You can select multiple points at a time. And there are ways to be able to smooth those and do some other things. But here's the assignment, is to begin to construct a space that holds 3 bodies. And we want to be able to move back and forth between your surface and your curves, and even your pupil. And so the lines and the curves begin to give us some intention. And again, I want you to build up those lines much more. I did this quickly for the tutorial, and there's still some other areas I want us to begin to work in here, and I can work with my surface. Begin to pull that. I could begin to pull some of these points around and begin to shift some of them so I get some more detail within here. But I could also add detail by adding additional control points. And I need more detail through here. So that I can really think about supporting the body. And this will be an iterative process. It's a lot more like sculpting, because you're just going to work back and forth through these things, adding points where you need them, stretching edges, moving faces, looking at those control points in different ways. And we've kind of buried our bodies within there. And so we can just come back and begin to work on the other side of it. Pull these control points. And you'll pretty quickly start to get a sense for how far you have to move a control point, and that the surface is an average of those control points. And so you can move one very far, but you can see the way that my other control point here affects some of this. And certainly this control point affects that. And so now that body has been completely exposed within the surface. So work on both sides of the surface, work with your control points and your sketches to begin to understand what's where. And does your cage need to align with the body? Does the surface begin to move? Does the contour lines begin to line up with aspects of the body? And maybe I'll add a few images as a way to help you think about those, how the contour lines might be working and what's going on with them. So I hope this helps. And let me know if you have any questions.